Welcome, corporate managers, or should I say CEOs, those of you that are operating and leading a real estate business. The Batman rather than the Robin, Batman being, of course, the person who is responsible for the bullion, as we say, and quite often Robin is in charge of working in the business, typically in the role as salesperson. This is our third session with CREAMstream, and on CREAMstream today we're just going to take a little bit of a diversion, mainly because it's top of the mind stuff, particularly with what's going on in and around the back of COVID. So I thought that we would talk a little bit about merging and acquiring. And for many of you, especially after the last session that we had, you're probably thinking, merge and acquire, is this guy insane? Because many of you are going to be at varying stages. You might be a startup where you've just heading out. You're going to be surprised to hear from me that you should start merging and acquiring almost immediately. A lot of people say this to me. They say, merge and acquire, don't you kind of, they're big words, isn't that for a bigger business? No, not at all. You should always be in a stage of growth. I can honestly tell you any business that's not growing, any business that's not looking expanding is actually in decline. And I'll share a little bit of that with you today. But the opportunity abounds. And so if you're an established office or you're a medium-sized business, you should be in acquisition mode. And then most certainly, if you're a large-scale business, well, that's probably how you got there anyway. So you would be looking at doing it, and that would be on the agenda almost automatically, notwithstanding the fact that I can probably suggest to you a couple of ways that you can go about that and ensure that it's all moving forward. So we'll get to that. Just a little bit of a recap on the last two sessions. Of course, we started early on with the essential agency elements. They were pretty straightforward. We talked about the fact that you need clients and you need to establish that, not least of which is facilitated, as we're going to be talking about in particular in Steam Room as it relates to, well, what we call a state of origin. So wanting to actually get the business controlling the incoming prospecting primarily through the sales team and sales team leadership and creating a profitable income stream. This all ties in as we start to expand more in and around CREAMstream and start talking about, I guess, payment and bonus structures, which we'll get to at a later date. So, fees, bonus and profit and how that all goes in around your business. And we have a wonderful system. Again, top of mind, I've been talking about it a lot today as it relates to what we call the functionally interdependent bonus structure. And we have made some modifications to that, but it carries through at every level, certainly at the sales associate level and how that works up into sales professionals, then entertaining, these larger peak performance professionals, particularly if you've got dynamic duos where you've got, say, a salesperson and a REO, or what is often referred to in the industry as an EBU, but I'll talk about why I think it's a DBU, a defective business unit. And, we'll get all that worked out. But it all comes back initially to the client, which is that first pillar. And we want to have a company or build a company, especially from the CREAM perspective, one that controls its customers and clients, basically its client database, because this is a discernible and integral part of the overall equity model that we are seeking to eventually build. And make no mistake, that is the key difference between a corporatized model and an income model, which I'll be talking about again a little later on in this session today. But basically, we'll get to an income, but an income model is one that really just relies upon earnings directly from, bringing money in, plus or minus expenses equals profit and or loss. We want to build, once we get to a level where we're satisfied with the income that's being derived, where we are basically building an equitable business, the more it's worth, and that's your real payday. It's just one conversation I was having with a leader today, them looking at selling up with one of their businesses, moving interstate, and the plan is very good. But, I just put the brakes on a couple of areas and said, well, you've got to look at that, what you're going to be doing at the other end. And are you going to be setting up shop up there? And if you are, that's going to pretty much affect how you, I guess, realize or liquidate the asset down south in order to kickstart the other one at top. So do be sure that you give me a call in and around these things. There's huge value in buying an established business, and sometimes it can actually be just a matter of moving the company that you've got. It sheds part of its businesses there, and it just clicks in up the top here, and not a lot changes. Geographical changes don't necessarily have to figure in with major business changes, because companies acquire and liquidate companies on businesses, I should say, on a regular basis. So don't let that be the dissuader. You just got to look at what is the best solution moving forward. And I must admit, some accountants, they're not always the best advisors, because usually, and they're the same as almost lawyers in some respects, the best answer they can give you most of the time is don't do it, or stick with the conservative approach, because there's a limited amount of risk. But sometimes the risk, when you look at the reward, is minimalized, and it is worth taking. So just take that on board for what it's worth, and always talk, seek advice. And, I'm just a phone call away. I do have a lot of experience in this area, good and bad. And I would be more than happy to share it with you at any tick of the top. So the first one was clients. The second, of course, was leadership. We know this is essential. This is what you do. Someone who is working on the company constantly. If you're a single operator, that is difficult in the early stages, at least, especially if you're a selling principal. So you're in the front line selling and or running the management department. You're working in the business. You're also working in the leadership component as the sales team leader or property manager. And then, of course, you needed to run and be overseeing the business. Something's got to give. It usually is the bit on the outside, the very thing that we're talking about here. So if nothing else, you do need an advisor. You do need counsel. You do need someone to be bouncing this stuff off all the time. And I thoroughly recommend it. That's leadership. Then we move into management. This is largely, and I'm talking about the management of the business, not sales management or otherwise. In fact, that is more leadership anyway, but you need that in place. And you need, just jumping back, leadership of the sales department. So the two leaders, one working in and on, we've already covered that. But then the business needs to be managed in and around its functionality at every level, be it at the administration level, be it at the sales and marketing level, or being it at the management level. So it needs strong functionality. It needs good policy and procedure. That was to be the subject matter today. There's a slight departure from that, but we'll get to it. And don't you worry. I always say you've got to get structure right before you start to embrace anything else, before you even start to engage in the business itself, especially in terms of the way in which people are remunerated. And I've already alluded to that. That becomes critical as well. So management needs to be important. Then we move to salespeople. Recruitment is a huge thing. I will be talking about that really this quarter as we head toward Christmas. That's important because it is traditionally the time of year, especially for a lot of salespeople. They might be considering a move or are unhappy with the environment. I think the market itself, I think the fallout of COVID is going to create great opportunities for employment and recruitment, and you need to be looking at those and making everyone aware that you are, in the first instance, approachable. You're able to talk. You do need to develop as the person who should be in the recruitment role, especially as it relates to experienced people. A presentation, almost like a listing presentation, I did allude to this last time, of how you go about winning or capturing the imagination, particularly of high performers or accomplished performers, and showing them how they can quite literally be earning more money with you, particularly if you build the right environment and can support them. Is that catchphrase I'm always reminded of, and one that just came up today, when salespeople get a little bit cautious and start focusing on percentages. That line that I always use to say, what do you want? Do you want a bigger percentage or do you want a bigger income? And of course they say a bigger income. I say, okay, so let's start with the income number and work back what has to be done. And let's come to an agreement of how we will get you to that income number. So if I lay out everything that you've got to do to achieve it, and then I fill in all the blanks in and around support, and especially as it relates to a thing we call an evaluation, you can win these people each time. And is it worth it? Well, if your structure's right, absolutely. Because each time you sell a sales professional into this, if you've got the right remuneration structure, they're making a good earn, but you're actually earning or at least retaining about a 30% of everything that comes in. So, you know, it just stands to reason. If you can secure someone that brings in 600,000 and you're retaining 30%, that's a $200,000 sale. If you find someone that's bringing 1.2, it's a $400,000 sale, and so on, straight to the profit line, straight to the COP, as we call it. So salespeople are all important. So there's the 1, 2, 3, 4. Then of course we talk about marketing. Marketing is absolutely critical. I've said this over and over again. It permeates every imaginable facet. Again, in recruiting, it permeates the prospecting function of your business, securing customers and retaining customers. And of course, it works in and around selling real estate, especially good, well-invested marketing for property listings pays enormous dividends. And I'll also talk at some stage about how important marketing is in and around the property management department and how you can bolster the return that you can get on management fees. I mean, I've got to say, the management fees that we get inside the property management department are diminished because nobody puts enough value in those or in and around those and understands how to structure it the right way, especially when you consider that most management portfolios are typically valued on the management fees that they're actually receiving. So is it not smarter to actually bolster that up and let go of some of these other things that we seemingly think are making us more money, but they're just an excuse because we're just not focused on essentially the area that we should do inside improving the overall worth or the equitable worth of that rent roll portfolio. So I'll get to that. Next thing is technology. This is one area that, you know, I've got to say, if you examine the smarts around technology, and I am a little bit skeptical because I quite often see that technology unnecessarily complicates certain functions in and around business. There's some that, you know, just lay down misères and have just proven to be huge levers in productivity, efficiencies, and ultimately profits. But you still need to examine technologies for its validity in a whole range of areas. And then last, but by no means least, the last pillar was that of prosperity. Just jumping back, it starts with the structure, how each dollar is distributed that comes into the company. And you need to know exactly how much of every dollar that comes in is retained as operating profit. Get that component right and you're well and truly on your way. And then you can start to embrace some of the things we're going to talk about in just a moment, particularly as it relates to expanding and improving the remuneration model. Then, so the next thing that we talked about was beginning at the end in mind, and we talked about some of the faltering things that we hear. And I just said, look, you know, I just wanted to talk about 9 steps I believe you ought to be taking toward agency business success. I'll just quickly go through those. Get contextually educated. You're on here, you're doing that, but just expand on that. So definitely we're looking, hopefully before the year's out, in November or during December, as we call it, conducting STEAM toward the end of the year. I think this is vital, particularly as it sort of has a very strong correlation to an area I'll talk about in just a second when I go around the traps, is particularly with with what we're doing in Steam Room at the moment, and what we're doing with what we call the last quarter of the year, or the quarter time finale. The next thing I taught is get a clarity about your overall objective. So you need to begin with the end in mind, understand where you're going. Are you building a big business? Are you building a medium-sized business? Are you building it to sell it at a certain point? Are you building it so that you've got complete freedom from it? So, if you're not working in it, it's working for you. You need to articulate your strategy. Every single person in that company needs to understand, culturally speaking, where you're going. This will pay enormous dividends for you. Set a lucrative structure. So make sure that you've actually got the business structured so that you are making money from day one. I was having a conversation with one of our leaders today who's in the middle of an acquisition. For that reason, I can't say who it is. But, there's been some great things that have come up, but the person who's selling it is getting out of it because they obviously didn't have a good understanding in and around business. And there was a question asked of this particular leader in that to retain this person on board. Now, bearing in mind, this very same person hasn't made sales for a number of months, was asking for an increased remuneration or percentage in and around a commission. And the salesperson almost had the audaciousness to say that I want an increase, and doesn't care that someone else in the company might be getting it. They say, well, you deal with each one on an individual basis. I said, so you got this person wants to come in, wants to stay there, wants all the support, hasn't cracked a sale for the best part, 4 or 5 months, and before that wasn't doing so well, has done well in the past, but they need a life support system. They need all the support we can get to jumpstart them, put the paddles on them and get their sales game going again. And this person's asking us to make them a special exception. Look, you said, well, I felt like saying, look, you offer them 100%. So what do you mean? Well, 100% is nothing is nothing. They're not going to be doing anything. So give them 100%. Or get that person to sit down and understand, which do you want, a bigger percentage or a bigger income? As I just said before. Leadership in and on the business. This is imperative that you are very clear, especially if there's two of you. A dynamic duo is fantastic, 2 partners, where you just have to create that distinction. Which of us is going to be working in the business, which of us is going to be working on the company. And then I believe you never look back. And if you don't have a partner, if you are a single operator, you should be searching at the very least for your 2 IC and know well ahead of time exactly where you want them to sit. Again, we've had some great, and I'm going to be telling some of these stories, good mergers and acquisitions that have occurred over the last couple of years with a lot of our clientele. But, one of the things I can tell you right now, and a perfect example, Steve Lovegrove over there, Kelly Kanarabat has just been a godsend as a leader. And as I said last week and even the week before, has proven me wrong, because it's the first time that I've been partial to the notion of moving someone into the sales team leadership role that hadn't, to this point in time, listed or sold real estate. Now, I've got to admit that Kelly's had a propensity to learn everything there is and consumed as much as she can up around the selling game to be able to support the salespeople. So much so that she sits there scratching her head already saying, how can these guys not be making more money than they are? They just won't engage. They won't have a go. But the thing that Kelly has is leadership qualities. She's a born leader. And this is the most important thing. This is what's paid enormous dividends. And now the structure of the business is settling in nicely. And we do have someone in and on. The business is growing. There's other offices, so we need more of that. But the reality is it's moving forward. Perpetually recruit a team. You are always hiring. This is what I said. We come to this time of the year, there's going to be some fabulous opportunities out there. You just have to make it known out there that the doors are open, if for nothing else than to explore all the support, everything that you can give or what your company has on offer. And again, if you're not real clear on what you should be doing and saying around this, please get hold of me. Please discuss it, because it is absolutely imperative that you are on top of this. Manage functionality. I think that's important. You've got to be constantly looking for processes and getting everyone to understand what their functional role is inside the company, so that you have a functionally, what we call, interdependent structure, where everybody can work alone or together, but everything kind of dovetails in, because you can't do this alone, particularly as that structure gets up. And master marketing, already talked about that inside the 7 pillars. So they were the tips that we gave. And today, as I said, we want to talk a little bit about merging and acquiring, and just getting some little actions that you can take or put in place almost immediately that are going to have a huge bearing on the future disposition of your company moving forward. So here we go. So now I just wanted to talk about what's happening, and it's important that you are having good communications with your sales team leader, or again, if you're the owner operator, or you're a single operator and you've got to be embracing this, you are probably in the most difficult part of the year, especially if you've got a sales team that are working in and around you. I cannot begin to tell you how important this month that we're in now is, and how that sets you up not just for a rails run into the end of the year and into the festive season, but more importantly, that creates that kickstart for the business to have continuity as we jump into the new year. This is what you actually have and what we refer to. So just going through what I've been talking to our leaders in and around Steam Room, I should say, in sales team leadership, you've basically got, well, we like to merge December into November. We call it November. The reason for that is I just find that once people hear the word September, particularly even once it hits about the 10th of December, people just mentally switch off. They are distracted by Christmas functions, end of year, Christmas parties, going and buying presents, and all the preparation ahead of the holiday. So some time ago, a few years back, we decided to just merge the two in, and rather than just running November to the 30th, we run it to around about the 20th of December, and just combine that month to call it November. So it just turns into one big month. And I think this works rather well. But in doing this, and you must make sure that your final day, and even if you're going to put your Christmas party on, put it on at the last day, just when you are closing up. This is another trick I learned some time ago. Some companies think it rather clever to have their Christmas party early in the month of December, but I just think you're almost inviting the team to mentally switch off. I think that's just nuts. I like to finish with the Christmas party. I pick the last day after we're done. We kick up the feet. They get drunk. They can do whatever they bloody like because they're off for a few weeks, and so be it, the 10 days or whatever that you decide to close down. But it's important. So we call October, this is notably comes from the Real Estate Rockstars, Rocktober. And the thing that you need to be impressing, especially with your sales team leader, and just make sure that they're across it, right now, every salesperson should be focused on the key component, which of course is what we refer to as their active property seller list, their APS list. Now, this has been referred to as a chase list. It can be referred to as a listings to get list, but it's any property seller that's become active that is imminently looking at selling. And I would even cover this right through into the early part of the new year, or to the end of summer, whatever you like. But basically, it's anyone that's looking to sell inside of the next 6 months. And that list needs to number per salesperson roughly around 25. Once they get to that 25 mark, I'm not saying they stop prospecting, you want to keep populating it, but at the 25 number, is so long as they run all of the functions, and I don't have time to share this with you here today, but if they're focused on it and they now have the premise to be having a minimum of around 5 good conversations per day, assuming that they're working 5 days a week. If they're having those good conversations, they follow all the protocols we've got with serviceability and getting stuff out, and they do this in the month of Rocktober. We call it Rocktober because it is the platform by which you set up the December, which gets you swinging in through December right up until Christmas, and beautifully it also then sets up the new year. Certainly, if you're working over a number of 25 active property sellers, it's just this as they start to come on that presence is going to generate more listings. I've said this 1,000 times, that listings beget listings. So you need to get your sales team leader focused on that. Ensure the team is doing it. If you are the corporate leader and also the sales team leader, well, this is what you need to be doing with each of your individual salespeople. And of course, there's a whole lot of other things that we're doing inside there, not least of which is the state of origin. We're going to be focusing on, building, and as this is all part of automation for each of the businesses, so that the vast majority of new and incoming clients are generated by your company. This is the mantra of Prospective 4 that we are releasing late in December. Also, the pre-list becomes, in your pre-list functions, there's this whole code that we've got. We're having enormous success. I've got to say this. Through our real estate rock stars and several of our sales team leaders, they are now doing an automated CMA as part of our prospecting package that goes out with a cover letter, does not give the opinion. We are seeing, and I've only just had a call today where there's 2 listings that have come on just with one that they've already got another 6 from this same letter, where they had 2 clients that were not thinking of putting the property on the market until after Christmas, now have changed their mind and they've come on and secured those listings. So it's important that we are servicing, making the right connection. That's been the theme that we've had through most of our stuff. So, the property sellers research guide, we want to see consistency with that, so that what we say in that guide is a product statement. Then everything that we do, right up from the open for inspections we conduct, the invitations, getting people to them, the way in which we qualify them and identify them, and all the products that we send out. This then sets up the perfect platform for the salesperson to turn up, give a listing education and engage them in all the right areas. Completely mitigates fee discounts. Again, it was Sebastian Viteri was on there today telling me that there's a little bit of pressure in and around fee. And I just believe it's all to do with everything that happens in the prospecting manner, right through to the presentation, and it's our disposition and the way that we embrace it that determines how it's going to work out. So there it is. So I just want to talk about this merge and acquire. I think it's important that you understand that in the same way that you are recruiting, you need to make it known that you are always in acquisition mode. It was about 3 years ago that I had Piers Crawford, who's got Ray White Holland Park up there, and he came along to Cream, and I said, get these merge and acquisition letters out, and he got them out, and along came a significant opportunity. He merged and acquired that, and of course with that comes some debt, but then of course and because of the sheer size of this, it was a bit of a job. But if you build it in the right way, and I can show you how to do this, you can merge and acquire and double the size of your rent roll every 18 months to possibly 2, depending on how big it is. In Pierre's case, this was larger, every 3 years. And this all begins with making sure that it is made known by all of your competitors, every last one of them, that you are always in buying mode. Now, got to say, again, it was only this week. I've got another one, and again, I can't tell you where they are because this one's still in the throes, and we just don't want that leaking. But this same letter went out, and the first thing this leader said to me last week, he said, you're not going to believe this, but these people came to us just the way that you said. They said, we got this letter from you a couple of years back, and it says that you're always looking to buy, and I just wondered whether you'd still be interested. And look, it was it's a cherry. It was just a no-brainer acquisition. So it all begins with you making sure as well, you're always looking. And as my father used to say to me, everything is for sale. And although you may not be thinking because you don't think you're big enough or whatever, but believe you me, any business that's not continually growing is actually in decline. And in particular, when it comes to the merge and acquisition of any other business out there that has a rent roll, strictly speaking, are cash flow positive. They take other properties out of the market. The benefits of acquiring these far outweighs the negatives. And in the building and construction of our equity model going forward, these are an undoubted link that sets you up with a great degree of permanency in the prosperity stakes. So as I said, you just got to spread the word. It's a simple procedure. You need to get in contact with me. I'll just give you a little bit of a read and I'll explain to you where this all starts. So basically we put a letter out, and this letter needs to come from a director. So it might not be you, but whomever is a director inside the company, you can just simply nominate someone. It is written to the director of the said company that you are competing with. I say that you put this into a yellow envelope that has no identification on the outside. It is clearly marked to the director at the company's address. I prefer to send it registered mail with confidential all over it. Why? It just has the ring. It will get opened. It will be treated seriously. No other markings, so that you don't put one of your company's logos or something on it. This is just off-putting to the recipient. There's just no need to do it. It still gets its message across, believe you me. And I'll just read this back to you. In fact, I might even put it up here on the screen so you can have a look at it. I have no problem with that. There's a little bit more that goes with it. If you want to just go ahead and do it and not consult or talk to me, that's entirely up to yourself. But basically it says to the principal director, so you can see all that red just needs to be interchanged. I'm specifically writing to local company proprietors in regard to their real estate sales and property management business ahead of our company brand expansion into the suburb region marketplace. So you're more or less saying we're expanding into your area. Not we're thinking about it, this is what we're doing. Our charter is to fulfill this objective in a timely and efficient manner. To this end, we are keen to evaluate the possible acquisition of existing businesses that might be suitable or explore potential mergers. As such, we are writing to several companies with real estate business interests to initiate discussions. I understand you may have no intention to sell or merge your business. However, experience or research has shown that every business has its sell price. So if I may be so bold as to ask, what is your price? That's my old man, yeah? So I say, like, everything's for sale, so what is your price? Now, you will get all sorts of numbers back when you hear this. Don't panic. I say, should you be interested in exploring the opportunities, then I would welcome your call in confidence on my mobile and telephone number or email at your convenience. Of course, all care will be taken to protect the nature of these discussions, whether it progress or not, and mutual non-disclosure agreements will be executed accordingly. Hope to speak to you soon. Your details, blah, 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 blah. Now, again, what you will get back from this, you'll get all sorts of varied responses. Now, if you put this out, I just make this point very simply. If somebody rings up and they ask and they say, well, you know, it's worth, just picking a number, $1.5 million. And you're thinking, you know it, you think it's probably worth no more than about $500,000. Don't panic. You just say to them, well, if it's worth $500,000, then I'd like to have a look at it. Until you actually view it, you don't know. And one of the things I always learned about this is to just keep the peace. I'm always a buyer and just go out and look. Because when I first started doing this, and this again was at the behest of my father, he taught me how to do this. It's quite clever. And then what I was doing, I was going out and I would visit these places. They would make me coffee and they would bring out all the books, all the sales registers, everything I wanted to see, and share all this information with me. And they're saying I needed to sign a non-disclosure. I would sign them all. And I was gathering information. I was seeing what was going on. I was checking out the worth. I was getting, because I wasn't disclosing it to anyone, but it's very hard for me to forget certain aspects. And what it was enabling me to do was evaluate new areas when we were moving in. This is just a byproduct because along the way I was picking up good businesses. And when I say good businesses, quite often I was picking up a rent roll, sometimes a little bit shaky, and there's lots of variances that went with that. But importantly, I was quite often able to also secure a position for the sales business. I might pick up some listing inventory. I might have to go into some deal where I'm paying some referral fee for some of that business or whatever. Quite often I'd pick up a database of people that they'd done business with in the past, good or bad, didn't matter. It was still a kickstart, a good place to start. Quite often I would get premises that might have been fit out or not fit out. These were ostensibly worthless, but that something might change hands. Sometimes I was paying key money. There are a whole range of variations. It all leads me to this point. The strength of any acquisition is not in how much you pay. It's not in how much is the multiplier. It is in the deal that you make. I've had all sorts of arrangements come to fruition, whether they be vendor finance, whether they be delayed payment. We even had one where we rented the rent roll off them. It was a try before we eventually went ahead and buy, and this was all documented to paperwork. There's been so many instances where we've done this, and it is just all added up to incredibly good equity, increased equity, and then increase the scope and reach of the business. That's the critical thing, and all of the byproducts. So you're always in merge and acquisition mode. Typically, what's the difference between the two? Well, the big eats the small most of the time. So if you're the larger of the two, you are acquiring. If you're bringing two businesses of almost equal size together, you may be merging them. It's just terminology. It's the one that's going after it. That's the one that's typically the dominant of the two and in control. I hope you've enjoyed what we've shared there today. What's the action? Just get that idea out and spread the word, and then at least you're looking at opportunity that might be coming your way. Hope you've enjoyed our little chat today. Won't be the next installment. We'll start to talk about pay structures and certainly putting a lot of time and energy into recruitment ahead of the new year to bolster your business and move it forward. So I hope that business is good, and I know that business is going to be even better. I think all of the opportunities that we've seen through the advent of COVID-19 is presenting more opportunity than you could possibly ever imagine. My name's Mark Dwyer. You can contact me, Mark with a K, at corporatemanager.com.au, or you can telephone me direct on +61 410 592 165, and I look forward to catching you on the next installment of CREAMstream Online.